Hi, everyone, and welcome to fan commentary on the MMPR 1995 movie. Now, this movie has been like in a love-hate relationship with me for many years. I remember when it first came out in 95. I was impressed by it when I was young. You know, it had the CG. They always constantly showed all the trailers off from all the various shows that I watched. I think the Rockets Away scene was used so many times. I never actually saw it in theaters. I'm just the kind of guy that doesn't really see movies in theaters that often. So it was not like I had preconceived notions on it that it was bad. But when I finally saw it on video for the first time, I hated it for not just the obvious reasons, but for the main one of the most was because it wasn't in continuity with the TV series. A lot of the stuff that the movie came up with, designs, characters, they were great. And when they were cut out or changed because of stupid legal reasons, because whatever character that was made in the movie, Fox owned it, or they owned this version of the character, so they couldn't do these things. It's just the writers for the movie, they didn't really match what the series was about. So a lot of the characters felt out of place. Bulk and Skull were mostly them, but even that was lacking because they really didn't get to do much in the film except until the end. And even then, they were mostly shown off by the kid. But the main thing I also hated about the movie is that I thought when I first saw the updated command center, updated ranger suits, I thought they were going to bring those things over to the series. The movie had a bigger budget. They were able to afford all these newer, cooler things that the series couldn't do. And I'm thinking it would make sense to just, bring everything over. You built it. So why not use it? And again, because the rights, because Fox owned whatever elements from the movie, and or they couldn't afford it because it would be too expensive to maintain, especially like Zordon's visual effects. They didn't bring it over, so you lost that film quality that the TV series lacked. The origin story of the ninja powers is completely different from the TV series, even down to the Tengus and Tangas, how they're spelled. Even that went into a legal nonsense. Now, a lot of people always, professionals always, rate the movie being horrible because of poor editing, lack of story, lack of consistency, the horrible CGI, which I'll agree on the horrible CGI in a lot of places. It gets a lot of flack because of that. So you look at those negative bits of the movie, but there are really good things about the movie which people overlook. Some of the visual effects are really great. And the movie story is not horrible. What it is that it relegates a lot of the TV characters into secondary roles, and of course, one of the bigger uh, roles is completely omitted, like Rita and Zed, which I was kind of shocked because they replaced them with Ivan Ooze. Now, Fred in the movie, I don't have an issue with him. At least he was a good actor because we had a lot of poor kid actors in the TV series over the years, which I'm glad they got something good. But he felt so ancillary that, like, you might as well not had him. And because he just basically kind of feels like a Bulk and Skull replacement. I always felt odd that they opened the movie with this whole skydiving thing. It just feels like weird. It's just like, would the guys really do this out of nowhere? I mean, they always do these charities and few other things. It just felt like completely left field how to start the movie. I always had pictured the movie when I was younger that they, switching to ninja powers, you would basically did what they did in Ninja Quest, lose the previous powers in a big moment. And that's what I always believed that they should have started the movie with. Instead, they kind of open it with this kind of lighthearted, kind of mini action scene that kind of has no bearing anywhere except for introducing us to Fred, which again could have still been done in another area of the movie. Now these scenes with the skating and stuff, again, all these kind of mini action scenes, if you want to call it, it's just really there just to sell the music. It really didn't feel like it had any purpose in the story other than that, just showing off the locations. Like, oh, we're in a movie, we can do a lot of these things that the show can't do, but it just really had no substance. Even when I was a kid, I really didn't care about these type of shots because again, it's just like it's not about our heroes, it's just showing, cool bits of them doing stuff. Which is the one of the major problems with the movies because instead of like, well, we have a movie budget, let's kind of like delve into, the past, like maybe talk about Zordon's past, Rita's past, Zed's past. They don't do anything like that. They decide to come up with an original villain that unfortunately can't even be used in the series. And I'm like, you really had good villains that you could use. It's just not really believable that the guy comes in and just simply kind of yells at them for a little bit. And it's just like they just immediately drop it and they switch over to this. It just feels, again, that's the reason why Balkans will feel really shoehorned into the story. Now this the reveal of Ivanuz's egg capsule, whatever you want to call it, it does have a very similar feel to the 2017 movie where the power coins are encrusted inside the ice rock. So has very similar elements from those bits. I thought the Ivanuz egg prop was really cool. I wish we hadn't got to see it a little bit more, but it's only used for these few scenes. Hoping that it still exists somewhere. I always found this scene was a little bit dumb because, okay, this guy just got zapped, and all they do is send like one security guard to there to protect it overnight, and that's really it. No SWAT, no like contamination team, nothing. Oh, and here's another thing that I liked about the movie. The movie updated everything from the TV series: the communicator sound effects, the communicators themselves, which we never can even see in here except for these little brief moments, and of course the main command center itself. And the visual effects, the teleporting, which I think were the best ones, and I wish they had at least done this type of effect, moved over to the TV series. It was a really cool effect. The matte painting for the command center I thought was the best thing out of the entire movie. The person who did it, it's very beautiful, and it still respects the original building that it was based off. Now, the command center for the movie, I think it's a really great design. I did like the whole paneling and the lights that flicker on and off. It's much bigger compared to the TV series. There's no void and all that weirdness. And they did keep core elements of the command center, like the uh, towers of the lights that move around, which is nice. Zordon's energy tube, which is probably the best thing out of it because Zordon gets to actually speak and we have lip sync. I mean, I like the lip sync. I just didn't care of seeing Zordon's face perfectly clear. I wish there was a middle ground where it was the original effect from the TV show, but with the lips being working. Now, Alpha's suit, Alpha always seems to have a problem when it comes to the movies. The 95 movies, Alpha, I really didn't like its design because they just made this like huge ball on top of his head and it kind of made him look really stocky, like he's super thin and tall, even though he's not really tall in the first place. It's just the way the suit is made, it feels like more like everything's squished together. And that's what they went with. Well, in the 2017 movie, he was more of an alien. Now we get introduced to the updated looks of Rita and Zed and Goldar. I think Goldar looks the best. He has actual functioning eyes with eyeballs that light up. Zed's suit, I think, is a really nice design. Again, he has a different, visor shape. He also has shoulder guards that are much more bigger. He's much more shinier. Although they got rid of the what do you call it? The blood chemical tubes that work. And Rita's actress in the movie, I thought she was really good. Her on-screen actress. Of course, Barbara Goodson's still voicing her. The other guy, the pig guy, which I always constantly forget his name because for whatever reason they cut out his introduction. I didn't understand why they added this guy. It's like we needed more comedy relief when Rita and Zed end up being comedy relief and Goldar being comedy relief to Ivan Ooze later on. It's like we needed four characters that are basically comedy relief. There was no point of adding this new character. No one cares about it. I don't even think they ever sold a figure for him. Now, the visual effects for Ivan Ooze's transformation, they're pretty good for 1995. Doing liquid in 95 is very difficult, so this effect is very good. It's other visual effects that are pretty crummy for 1995. Paul Newman playing as Ivan Ooze, I think he did a really good job. There's no problem with what he did. The makeup's great. The way he wants to play the character, this huge bombastic, that's perfect. It's the writing behind him that was annoying. The reason why I don't really care for him is that he is menacing and he is comical, but the comedy bits of him don't hit perfectly. Like there's some bits that just don't make any sense. Even when I was young, and he made that comment about the Brady Bunch is back and all this stuff. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I always wondered where like Ivan Ooze fits into all this because Rita hates Zordon, Zed hates Zordon, Ooze hates Zordon. Obviously, Zed and Rita know Ooze somehow because he's probably done a lot of horrific things in the past, but we really don't know any backstory to the character where he fits in and like what went on in the past. Obviously, 10,000 years is a huge gap, and there's a lot of villains that could pop up on Zordon's time. It's just there's nothing elaborated. It's just he pops in, Rita and Zed get thrown out, and that's pretty much it. Another thing that sucked about the film is that it feels small, even for being large budget. It's not a huge budget film, but it has a really decent budget of for a movie. It's just that if you pay attention to all the scenes where they film in Australia, it's pretty much the same. When they're jumping around on their roller skates in the earlier scene, it's basically the same area where this place takes place. It's just in the day. And they try to hide it, but you can pretty much tell. They're always around the same locations, which makes it feel small rather than trying to go into many, many different locations. It has the TV show's limitations in a movie budget, which sucks. Also, for being almost, almost 2 hours long, the characters don't get the same much, which sucks. There's really not a good balance between the main cast. It's just they focus on Billy, Tommy, Kim, while Adam, Rocky, and Aisha don't really get, featured. Which I kind of understand because when the movie was in production, Aisha, Adam, and Rocky were casted as replacements for the team, so they had to be immediately rushed in to do the movie. And obviously, these characters were not established at this point for the writers to understand what to do with them, so they kind of made them blank slates. Because if you can honestly slot them in anywhere, except for certain lines here and there, but really, it could have been Trini, Zach, and Jason. You would not have known the difference. Now, this first fight scene, we have three basically minions that the Rangers fight. These ooze guys, the Tengas, and of course the rock monsters. If you want to argue the dinosaurs later, these guys I think were the second best out of all of them. I don't know. The Tengu fight was really not that really interesting. I think also the main problem with the movie is that even though they have the stunt guys and everyone from the TV series working on this, it still didn't feel like it deserved to be a film because I think it also ran into the problem of it's a PR show and it still has to be, for kids, and I'm not saying that's wrong. And it is, but it is PG, so they could allow more different types of fighting, and it's just like they still had the same restrictions on the type of they would do. They really would focus mostly on acrobatics rather than hard punching and kicking on all the characters, which I will say Turbo's movie actually did that a little bit more better. Oh, I will complain about this. When I was young and I was like, oh, we're going to see the new morph sequence from the movie, and it was complete junk. I really hated it. It was so cheap and lazy. It's possible when they made the morph sequence in the movie, this is probably when they ran out of budget and they had done all the CG work beforehand. It was so boring. There was nothing special from it. The TV series morph had more effects done to it than this. The coin flies out and then that's it. That's it. That's the only visual effect element from this. I was like, wow, it's so underwhelming. Also, the movie suits, for the most part, are fine. I don't have a problem with the movie suits. The only thing I never liked was the coins being on the chest. It's always been a common thing I never liked. I think it started because the figurines started doing that because this weird issue with Bandai. The figurines have to be slightly different because I think it was Bandai Japan had an issue because this was the first time they brought it over to PR. They didn't want to sully their image, so they wanted to make the US figures have these, the logos on them. I really love that shot, that night shot of the command center. It's just beautiful matte work. A lot of the matte work done in the movie is amazing. I just wish the CG work was done better. Honestly, if I had a choice where 95 CG or practical effects, they should have gone with practical effects. It would have been really cool to see the Ninja Megazord as a practical suit. Use the actual suit like in Turbo Power Ranger movie. I will take the Turbo Megazord fight in that movie over the CG. This is what I always wanted it to happen: is the bad guy would actually get into the command center, which they only did once with Zed and MMPR, because the command center is sacred, and a bad guy coming into it is like the worst thing that can happen. Also, what I hate is that we can't really get a good look at the consoles. Like, the viewing globe almost never gets used. We really don't get any really good views of the room, because that's the main thing that sucked. Because the Rangers have to go on this quest, and the command center has to be forgotten about. It's like they did all this amazing work, and then the place is not used. I always wondered why the lip syncing was not good in the film. That was kind of what I wondered about. It's like they didn't want to do another take on that. The thing that sucks also the most is that the command center gets destroyed like really quick, and then we can't even enjoy it in a nice state. It has to be all damaged. It's like, again, if you're trapped 10,000 years inside this egg, how do you know anything? Are you active in there? Do you have TV somehow? Another thing that I get annoyed at is that, okay, the Rangers are fighting these guys, and the command center is destroyed, but for whatever reason, the Rangers' suits don't get powered down here. I do like that they gave the Ranger suits, new abilities. That was nice. But then only certain characters got new weapons, and that really didn't make any sense. And they also ignored their standard weapons. I always found that odd. They never used their blade blasters, even though they did design them. You can clearly see them inside their holsters. They're just never used. Again, I wish this was brought over to the series. The helmet eyes are perfect to be used as, flashlights. That would be a really cool bonus addition, which doesn't really get used that often, obviously, in PR. A lot of times they'll be carrying extra equipment, and the suits could be used as that type of element. I always found this odd because, why would the bad guys be hiding? It doesn't really make any sense. But again, obviously, it's probably mainly because he's trying to give Ivanus enough time to destroy the command center. But they should know by now that they already did it, so there's no reason to keep them preoccupied. This is why I wish the command center's destruction happened after this scene, because it doesn't make any sense. This is one of where the editing is just bad. I always wondered how much of the editing changed the film, because there's a lot of things that are missing, which sucks that Shout Factory, when they got the rights to the HD version, couldn't go through the original film negatives and find either bloopers or lost material, because I would have loved to have seen not only any cut material for what the pig monster, like his backstory, at least introduction, but also the unused shots of the Rangers filmed out their visors. I thought that was so bizarre that the executives of Fox would be so scared to have the Rangers' faces not visible on screen. And I'm like, how is that a horrible thing? It's like people can act through a helmet. It's difficult, yeah, because you have to work on body motions. The stunt performers have to do a lot of that work, and the actors have to speak. But it is doable, obviously, because the TV show does it all the time, and they got better over the years. They got very good, and even till today, it's really good, because that stuff is hard work. It's just bizarre that they said, we have to see the actors behind it. But that basically means the actors have to be visible every single time, and it makes the stunt performers harder to do their job. They have to constantly, hide their faces when in the helmets is what that's the main reason why they're there. Is for protection. Why would you expose the person's face? And I've seen photos from it. It just looks so ridiculous. I never understood who got like what determined what ranger got these special weapons, it didn't even make any sense because Bandai never even sold them. I always wondered why that. I never understood in general why Bandai America didn't actually sell the MMPR movie suits proper until the Legacy line. Basically, I was confused on that. It's like when the movie came out, I was thinking the Ninja Megazord would be a special chromed version of the toy to look like the CG model because it was highly reflective and that was like the cool thing of the 90s. And it wasn't. It was just the box was special, but the toy was the same. I never understood what was up with Bandai and then not doing anything properly from the movie. It's like we have this big movie coming out. This is the height of MMPR's popularity, and Bandai doesn't sell toys based exactly off the movie. I will say this fight is very boring. There's not much that happens. Again, they're treating it like the TV series, but they're like, oh, we have to fill an hour and a half. Let's make this scene 5, 6 minutes when this scene would be like a minute or two, even 30 seconds in the TV series, which will play out much better. That's why the movie sucks a lot in a lot of areas because it feels like this long drawn out thing where it's like forced to. I hated that's the only time you ever see Saba do anything in the movie. I mean, at least we got this visual effect of the suits powering down, which is that never actually happened in the show all that often, but it didn't match the series' visual effects in any way. I think that's a common thing with MMPR. Even when they bring the MMPR suits back in modern series, the visual effects artists don't really like respecting what they came up with in Jew Ranger with the grid effect and stuff. I would like to build on that element rather than come up with something original because every time we bring back MMPR stuff, the visual effects for the suits and stuff constantly change. There's no consistency, which is like unfortunate because this is a universe. Once something's established, you should, try to keep it as consistently as possible because it just feels more like, this is not a new product every single time and, these characters exist. I do like this idea where if you destroyed Zordon's tube, it would force him out of his time warp and, physically bring him here. But then it brings up questions of, I thought Zordon was trapped in a time warp beforehand, and then the tube is what keeps him anchored. But in the movie, it's just, it keeps him alive, but he can come back to the real world. Obviously, you can just forgive this because this is an alternate universe, so the Zordon can function completely differently from the TV series. So, which is fine, but if this was linked to the TV series, getting him out of the tube wouldn't free him of this time warp. Then again, they don't really explain, like, does he care that he's stuck in a time warp? Did he do it on purpose? I haven't read all the comics, so I'm not sure if they ever delve into that. But from the TV's perspective, it's like that's all gray area. I do like Alpha's lightning bolt effect. That's like the best part on his suit. It's just I don't know. I think his helmet is too busy. I think that's what it is. They always seem to want to overcompensate with Alpha's helmet because it's very basic and shiny in the on the regular series. So they're like, oh, well, let's just add more details. That's basically what they did to Alpha's suit. It's like add more details, add more details. The movie's basically like that. Add more details. Now, here's a question. Do I like the way the movie did the ninja powers or the way the TV series did the ninja powers? I really can't answer that because there's a lot of things that I really love from the movie way they did it, and also a lot of things they did with the TV series, and I wish you can combine both of them. That's what I wished at least the TV series had done because I love Dulcia's character in the movie, but I also love Ninjor's character in the TV series, and they both share the same thing. I would have loved that if the TV series was in continuity with the movie, that they would have at least referenced Dulcia as being an underling to Ninjor, or at least they knew someone or reference it. And it would have been, I think that would have been, a good place to do it with, but they decided to keep them isolated and separated. I like the lair for Lord Zed. I think the wall, the crazy skull bones design on the wall was a really interesting idea. I think the only thing that I didn't like was that the floor is kind of generic. It's very plain. They have the smoke like in the TV series, but it's like not much there. I think it just needed a little bit more like something else on the floor than just smoke. But I like that they did respect the TV series outline. It does have the air vent. It does have the chair that Zed would sit on. And it has the balcony. It has the same layout as the series. Just a little bit more extra details like in there. The thing that I always wondered, where's Finster? Where's Squat and Babu? It's like you couldn't just bring in at least Squat, replacing the pig. It's like, why? Like, why didn't you just do that instead of creating this new character for no reason? I hated this the most because the characters for Rita and Zed were already starting to become more of a joke, and then they just throw them in here. It's just like, well, they don't feel and menacing anymore. It's just they keep making them feel stupider and stupider. It's just like I don't care about them anymore. I will say they did get Goldar's personality correct in this. At least he's consistent. He'll serve anyone and not just to try to avoid getting killed. Again, this is a precursor of Goldar going bad in the show because again, he was really great in season one, but then after that, he just starts being second fiddle to everyone and then joining along with jokes and not feeling menacing anymore. I was so annoyed that we had this really cool Goldar suit and we got no fight with the Rangers. I mean, I understand getting the scene with the Ooze guys, but Goldar couldn't join in at all? Like, why not? That's like the thing he would have loved to have done. And this fight scene might have been better. At least we would have had a commander and it could have been a little bit more personal with Goldar's backstory and it might have worked better. Now, the Tengas, Tengus, whatever which way you want to call them, they're okay bad guy minions. TV series version, same thing. They're not horrible. They're not in any Super Sentai material, so they're all original stuff for us. They're just underwhelming because they don't really get used. I do like the shot of the palace, but it looks more like a mountain edge than rather than the actual Bandora Palace. Now, at least with this location for Dulcia and the New World is a new filming location in Australia, so I give them that. This would not be done in the TV series, so this does take advantage of the film's budget, which is well worth it. I think honestly, this scene is probably the best scene inside the film, where the introduction of Dulcia, the backstory of this world, and of them trying to journey for the power. I just wish the first half of the film was either faster or just had more to it, which they could have done in many different ways. Speaking of which, this is what always puzzles me whenever like a kids TV series goes into a movie form and it's a little bit more higher age rating, PG. It's okay to have that in the movie, but in the TV series it's not. Well, like why can't the TV series be PG themselves as well so that they can be allowed to do a few more things? It always never made sense to me that that happened. This I always found kind of odd because Ivan Ooze is this all-powerful magical being, and he can pretty much create anything. Why does he physically have to make the ooze bottles from an actual real factory rather than just magically create them? Obviously, the whole him turning into a clown and giving them for free, you have to do. That makes sense because he wants to keep the humans unsuspecting of his evil deeds, and that's that's how he torments them. That's fine. This part, I don't. It just really didn't feel any purpose because obviously he uses the ooze to power his ectomorphicons, but still, again, why does he need the physical factory to do all this? Just create the ooze from yourself and fill up the machines themselves. I don't know. It just again, it just felt kind of like a waste of time because again, it's a movie. We got it to look cool and interesting. I think if they had restructured this, like many scenes in the movie, it would have worked better. Like, instead of this, they could have gone back to the quarry, well, construction area, and started seeing them dig out the ectomorphicons. Again, it would have been a visual effect, but then that would have been actually important to the story. We don't really get to see all that much of those, physical parts of those Zords. This is the only time the characters really ever get to be themselves. It's just wall to wall action, which again, fine, but especially for you know parents that have to watch PR for the very first time, most likely with this movie, the introduction with that text that Dulcia reads at the beginning, that's kind of the the boring way to do that instead of like introducing us properly to the Rangers and at least parents would understand who's who, and that would give more time to at least show new things of the characters, like maybe a little bit more to Aish and Rocky and Adam because they're fairly new at the time. They could have given a few extra bits of backstory to them while reiterating on the first three. I particularly don't like this fight scene with the Tengas. It's I think it's because the Tangas fly and you can clearly see that they're on cables, so that kind of breaks the immersion. So I would have liked to have they just fought on the ground and not do this air stuff. And I think also the actors don't feel, I don't know how you could say it, it's like comfortable in doing these scenes. It just feels like they're kind of like it's a first take, first go, and like for example, there like you saw the Tenga trying to punch Aisha, and you can clearly see he's not doing anything. It just this is the type of editing complaints that people had. Now Dulcia's introduction, that was perfect. It's like the one thing they got right. And this is the first time we get to see the character. We get what she can do, what she can fight, what she stands for. She knows Zordon somehow. They don't really elaborate on it, but that's okay. Don't have to explain everything for every single thing because this character can, just already doing a lot of stuff. And they did her pretty well. I just wish the TV series was able to get her character and then she can come back. Oh, if you pay attention, when she's spinning the staffs, you can actually see, like in this shot, that she's spinning them on their pre things that just make it easier instead of her moving her wrists. So she's using them as like batons. The one good thing that came out of the PR movie is that they found Catherine Sutherland while they were casting for Dulcea. So if they never made the movie in Australia, they would have never found her, and we would have missed a really good pick ranger. So if you really hate this film, the one good thing that came out of it was her casting. Like to know more about Phaedos? Do they just like like culture or something? It's like all that we have all these like planets that PR does come up with, and we never really get to see them in any great detail, and which sucks. Is like, oh, we got world building and just not much to do. This, I mean, I like that they keep the stakes up because Zordon's slowly dying. You have to keep going back to him to keep that in your mind. I never liked it though that Alpha's not doing any repair work on the command center at all. He's just doing virtually nothing. It's like there had to have been at least several hours that had passed when the Rangers had left. I always found it again. Bandai missed an opportunity to sell the Ivan Ooze bottle and even the ooze itself in there for like something. I always wanted the ooze bottle myself because I always liked that gooey stuff. That was kind of cool. Even like I would have just liked it for just the bottle itself. Again, Bandai had a chance to sell stuff from the film and they didn't do anything. It just felt so bizarre and anti Bandai to do things like that. And I think that's the problem that happened with the 2017 film. It was like Bandai compensated for what they did with the 95 film with the lack of selling products from it. And then they went overboard to 2017 one where they had so many things. Now, see, here's a beautiful matte painting slash set. This is one of the best sets they came up with. It's beautiful that this is all a visual effect. All this stuff is post work, and this is really good work slash. Oh, of course, there's a translite in the background too. But here's a really nice, beautiful matte painting of that mountain. I just would have liked to have known like how to Dulcine. It's like Zordon knows so many characters throughout the universe. It's just like who doesn't know him as like a friend or anything. It just always feels convenient. And I found it interesting that the ninja powers were introduced as an alien Power Ranger source, which again gets echoed later on in the Alien Rangers because Power Ranger powers can come from virtually anywhere. It doesn't have to come from Earth. Every planet has the morphing grid in their own way. I always thought that was cool that say Earth Power Rangers could be used by someone else from another planet, which, it gives you so many different types of story ideas that you could do, like how they can function differently. It sucks, though, since if they had, if they were never going to use anything from the movies into the TV series, they could have made the Ranger suits when they got the ninja powers completely different instead of relying on the actual stock movie suits. So we could have had two movie suits, the MMPR movie suits, and then a Ninja Ranger movie suit. And I think, for being a movie, they could have afforded to do two different types of suits to at least emphasize that these are new powers. Like, can you imagine if, say, Turbo's movie and they had just reused the Zeo suits and they just called them the Turbo Powers with just slight modifications like they did with these? Everyone would have been like, what the freak? So I always felt it was so dumb that when the Rangers' powers come back, it's just their coins on the chest are different. That's probably the reason why they put the coins on the chest, because other than that, they would have been the exact same suits. If you pay attention, it's just like you can't tell the details on the power coin on the morphers. There's like literally nothing different then. I will say that the ninja outfits here are at least they brought this over to the TV series. I did like that sub interim mode of the Ranger powers. I kind of wished more PR seasons did that. I always wondered though, does Tommy have access to his ninja powers on his Master Morpher? Because we never see him actually use this. The one thing that I did like about when they switched over to the ninja powers is they did get new types of Zords, because I was getting tired of the Zords being kind of mythical creatures. You know, the Dinosaurs and the Thunder Zords, they're all fantasy, while the Ninja Zords were more grounded. You had a giant bird, but then you had a gorilla, bear, frog. It was more natural stuff that they had dealt with, which, you know, I always found funny. I think the best line here is Adam's line and Dulcia when they say, "Yeah, I'm a frog," and that's an ad lib, and that's like the best line in the movie. They were lucky when it came to Cucker Ranger that they actually had a sixth mecha that perfectly aligned with Tommy's White Ranger powers, because I don't know what they would have done in season 3 if they didn't have that Zord. I mean, it was so complicated the with Pink and White sharing a Zord in the Shogun Megazord, which I thought that was kind of stupid. Okay, we have a White Ranger Zord on the Shogun, but we don't have a Pink Ranger Zord. What I would have done in that case, Tommy operates White Shogun and the White Falcon Zord. And since Kim didn't have her, well, she has the crane, obviously, on the Ninja Zord, but she didn't have one on the Shogun Zord. What I would have done in that case, she operates the Falcon Zord as a trade-off. It just felt stupid that two share one Zord. I'd rather just flop them around, or at least have them alternate. Like, she can use the Falcon Zord, he can use the Shogun Zord, and vice versa. Goldar, so underutilized in this film completely. Zed and Rita just being forgotten about. It just sucks because it's like all these characters and you just sideline them for this new guy. It just doesn't feel fair. What I would have done if you had to have a new villain in the MMPR movie like this, what I would have done was had Ooze brainwash everyone. Basically, Zed tries to, release Ivan Ooze, and he thinks, oh, I can control him. And then Rita's like, well, you can't control him. He's trying to wipe out all these people. He can't be killed and whatnot. That's the reason why he was sealed away. He releases him. He plays along with them, and then he immediately brainwashes everyone. And then they're under his control, and then they're just used throughout the film. So at least they get used in some capacity. Goldar can still fight the Rangers, things like that. At least they'll be used on camera, but they don't get to do anything and get thrown away. It just feels so like shafted for new stuff. Explores backstory while he uncovers the ectomorphicons. Like, was he in a great fight, war with Zordon or with his people? Was he going against some forces of Rita's? We don't know. Maybe he could have been doing something behind the back and no one would have realized it and he just got caught off guard. How did he get captured? Things like that. Like, past Rangers capture him? Like, what happened in all those years? Here comes up our next fight with the weird dinosaur bone things. Now, a lot of people today are gonna do cringe at this scene. It's not amazing. I'm not gonna say it's this beautiful artistic thing, but I will give them credit because when they talk about this in the bonus features, if you ever watched it on Shout Factory, this was like a last minute thing where they were able to animate the bone monsters and for them to ride around and stuff. And I'm glad they did it because at least it was something unique and they were able to pull it off okay enough and they didn't go near CG because if this was done in some CG way, it would have looked absolutely horrible and it would have sucked. This pig guy, oh my god. I can't I think what was his name? Morant or something like that? He does nothing in this film that Squat hasn't done anything. If it was Squat, at least we would know it from the TV series, so I wouldn't really care that he was ignored because he only does a few things, so it'd be fine. Like, who's this guy? Where did he come from? What planet he's from? Does is he a relative to someone? It's like, who is this character? I will give them that they also at least took control of people from Angel Grove, so it raises the stakes, and it's something that really doesn't happen often in PR. I mean, the closest we got was when the Rangers' families were taking control into the Dark Dimension, and they are used as a way as a cliffhanger piece at the end, which is cool too. I just wish there was a little bit more done in this area. Is this too much for kids? Is this too little? We don't want to bore parents. It's like there's like 3 4 people voicing their opinions on the film, and then that's why like this movie falls into this mush meh middle ground of like not doing anything. Now, the thing with the ninja interim powers, they don't really explain how they actually, like, fare. Like, do they give the Rangers extra strength, extra defense? Like, can they absorb hits? They really don't delve into that area. It's just like they're just cloth. So it's like, because, everything we see them do is just something that the actors can do on set normally in their regular clothing. I wish they had done a couple of extra things that these suits could do that the Rangers can't. Like maybe give them an extra sword, like some sort of weapon of some kind, which they could have done because they could have easily said, "Oh, let's use some of the weapons that Cocker Ranger had them use that were not part of the Ranger suits in on Cocker Ranger." They had some side weapons they could have easily given them and then used them as these things. I always wondered though, why does ooze hate humans? 10,000 years ago, humans would basically have been, you know, insignificant to nothing animals to them. So like why would they really care like now? Like they have a grudge against them? It's like Zord was the one entrapped you. This is another thing that I didn't understand. Okay, if he had the power to like want to control people, why not inject all this ooze into the city's water supply and take control of them there? And then use them to take over the planet too. It's like there's many different things they could have done to make this more of an impactful story and not just simply power these ectomorphicon machines. I will say that the CG on the ectomorphicons isn't horrible. These guys, because again, it's 95, very limited budget. But even if they had like top of the line budget, shiny, it was very difficult to do in these days of early CG work. Look at Toy Story. That's the top of the line stuff for CG work of the time. It's amazing for what they accomplished, but to today's standards, it's very simplistic. And it's the same thing applies to here. There is good CG in PR, and then there's very bad CG. We'll be coming up to that when they get to the Zord stuff. I say this is the best fight in the entire movie with the rock monsters that guard the temple's entrance door. I really love this actual part of the set. I think the temple door was actually very nicely done. The set designer for the movie, when they had a chance to do, some alien stuff, they did some really good work. All the Rangers got pretty much something to do. Although I did hate that Aisha is the one that constantly keeps getting scared. I don't even understand that. I mean, I can understand her being scared when she first became a ranger. That's completely acceptable. And but over time they would, eventually get used to it and not be scared at all. That's what Billy did from, the beginning of season 1. We're in technically season 3, so we've had nearly an entire year with Aisha being a ranger. Why would she be so scared and run away from these guys? These guys' suits are pretty cool, and I wish they had brought them back in the TV series. They couldn't even afford any visual effects shot for them switching their well, not helmets, their ninja masks back on. It's just like, also they could have said back to action. It's like they didn't bring that in. I always wondered like what was the process of, coming up with the movie, figuring out where they wanted to do, and then, the visual effects, the, music, the editing, all this stuff, like what was the process they had to go through? Because again, Power Rangers is very different than traditional, filmmaking. You have to deal with toy company, you have, strict things that you can do with the characters because they didn't know what they were going to do. Were they going to use Trini, Jason, Zach? I mean, the making the movie came out of, left field because they didn't know it was going to be popular. So like all these things factor into why the movie came out the way it did. There's like so many different factors that like just decide how the movie goes, and it's just like even with the limited budget, there a lot of better things could have happened in this film, and there was really good potential in it that they just unfortunately they left on the wayside. It could have been a little bit more dramatic. It didn't have to be as hokey, which I'm not saying cut it all out. The key things that I would like to change from the film is Fred, remove Fred, use Bulk and Skull in that particular area. Ivan Ooze is a menace towards Rita and Zed specifically, and so that he shows that I mean business. I will stop the Rangers, kill the Rangers at any cost. If they were going to be stuck in the whole rights issues that don't allow this movie to be in continuity with the TV show, they could have killed Rita and Zed off and got rid of them. It wouldn't have mattered because it's out of continuity. So it doesn't matter if they kill any of the characters off. I would have definitely used Goldar for a ton of these things. Kept this fight scene. I think I would have gotten rid or sped up at least the Ivan Ooze first fight. And probably had just gotten rid of the Ooze guys and just used the Tengus from the start and just combined the two fight scenes with them. The movie suffers from being, I say, 30 minutes too long, but then again, it can't be a film. So I think if the writers had maybe more time to write a story that was more compelling, that used the characters, I would have probably had kept it on Earth instead of going to a different planet, but still had Dulcia be like come to Earth. Maybe that's what I might have would have changed. There's just so many different ways they could have done it. They could have also introduced Ninjor with Dulcia to link it to the series. The first priority I would have had was that this movie is in continuity with the TV series. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's what I would have preferred the most out of any type of change first. I mean, you could still say that Ninjor did still create the Ranger powers. There's nothing saying that he just simply made them in this version of the franchise on this planet and hid them away as a great power that was only, for people who was worthy of these abilities. And Dulcia guarded them for people who really deserve it versus, people who are just trying to take the powers for their own personal gain. The music of the movie really, helps it greatly because a lot of the scenes feel very flat and the music saves a lot of this bit, especially this scene. This is the heroic theme. And honestly, the CG over here is pretty fine because, again, it's more abstract. So it's not the cheesy. I always wondered why she turns into a bird. My theory is that she does it in order to conserve her life. And that's how she lives for so long. She lives as a bird, and only she ever turns into a human to either, prevent people from gaining the power. Then again, her duty is mostly complete. Now, here's the beginning of bad CG. The main reason why the CG is very bad in here is because the worst thing you can do in early 90s CG is put it in a daylight sequence. That's the reason why most of the scenes in, say, Jurassic Park, they take place at night because the CG work can be hidden and blended in much more easier than compared to in the day. In a lot of cases, the CG done in these scenes looks worse than Reboot. Because Reboot has better lighting. They could not match the lighting at all, so there's a lot of scenes with some of the bugs that look like it's too orange. It doesn't reflect the environment correctly. So this is all the stuff that adds to the problem of the CG looking like junk. And that's the reason why they switch immediately to nighttime now. We only had that one bit of daylight because it's just the CG was going to look horrible, and they probably said, okay, it's going to look bad. We have to get away from it. But then the unimaginable happened is when the CG looked bad and even worse in the dark, which blew my mind that people who can do this work, I was like, did you literally do this in a month, all these shots? Because that's what it felt like. In certain shots, the reflective lights that are supposed to be from the fires, they're either in the wrong positions, they'll be, too strong in one area. Like here, for example, he is not really reflecting the lighting or it's mistimed. These little details add up, and then that's why you hate the CG. Now, the bugs are bad mainly because of lighting problems, but the Ninja Zords in their animal forms are okay. I would say they're okay. The the Ape Zord is not good. The Ape Zord has a lot of scaling issues because it doesn't really make any sense. I mean, granted, the Zords change scale in the show because it has to become an arm, so a lot of things have to change scale. It's cheated, but when it's CG, it's just worse. The cockpits for the Zords are pretty cool. Again, these I wish were brought right over to the series. This scene always made me think of Batman and Batman Returns. It just has that feeling of the street that was destroyed during the Joker invasion. It just feels kind of like that. Even the music kind of harkens back to this. Oh yeah, this music cue came out of nowhere, out of left field. It's supposed to be this dramatic moment, and then this music comes right here, and it's just we're having a party. No one cares. It's just like crazy. Again, the problem is they didn't set any of this up. It's just like it abruptly goes from scene to scene to scene, and it's like there's no like kids hate the parents, so they're kind of being delinquents. We didn't delve into that until just here. Why is Bulk and Skull here? It doesn't really make any sense. Now, all the most of these city sets are actually miniatures done, and some CG work, and of course some live action elements that are done as well. If you look really closely, you can see the frog sword is not perfectly aligned to the floor, and the shadows are just a little bit cut off in certain areas that it shouldn't be. The Wolf Zord has the most problems with being realistic. Those are the type of mistakes that show that these guys rushed and they didn't. These were like literally first passes or second passes on the visual effects. A lot of the shading that's done on these Zords is literally the same type of shading that was used in Beast Wars. And that's acceptable because, again, it's a TV series. They have to crank them out. They have limited budget. And, you don't expect too much. But even then, they got better and better at their visual effects so that the shiny nature of the transmetals in Season 2 did not look this poor. And whenever they mix the live action elements into the CG cockpits, there's this weird, bizarre aspect ratio problem, which I don't understand why that happened. Because you have to transfer the film into the CG element where it's basically a video image in the model itself. But for whatever reason, they don't properly have the aspect ratio that's correct. It's like they didn't understand how to, and it's really noticeable when they first zoom out from the Megazord when they first combined it, and it's worse when you see it in HD. The most famous scene in the trailers, I think, used 50 million times. I mean, it was even used in all the TV guides that featured the PR movie. I still have those. It was like the main thing. Now, this is probably the worst moment because when you incorporate a person into this type of CG, it doesn't look good at all. It looks like it's from a video game, very poor render. I wish they hadn't done it. It just shows even more of the flaws and the rushed nature of the CG work. But that's still not the worst part of the CG fight. The thing I don't even understand is that they made this transformation even more complicated than what the TV series does. Like all these things come in and out, and it's like the show versions, which are practical props that transform, do it better than CG, which can do almost anything. But since it transforms and creates things out of nowhere and adds detail and screws up the scaling with the most horrible face the Ninja Megazord ever has. Here's that weird aspect ratio problem again. The face and the torso on the Ninja Megazord and plus the arms are completely disproportionate to a person. It makes no freaking sense. This is extremely bad CGI. I also found it odd that the Ninja Megazord is using the Shogun Megazord sword. It's just like, did it really need a sword in this fight? He could. The whole point of the Ninja Megazord is to fight with their fists and do the finishing moves. Superman moment here. And they get rid of the power sword, as they call it. I don't know why they couldn't just call it the Ninja Sword. I do like the bridge. The bridge is actually nice. They always seem to get that right. The Turbo Megazord's cockpit from the movie, Ninja Megazord's cockpit from the movie. Beautiful stuff, and we can't even see it. And this is the only time there's actual practical prop of the Ninja Megazord used, and it looks far more better than the actual CG one. And I wish they had used it too. I wish at this point I wish they had just done stop motion. Cool thing though is they do this whole outer space thing, which PR hasn't done before at this point. I thought that was that's a cool idea. At least you gave us something that was possible in the movie budget. And it shows they didn't have that much time on the CG work because they didn't even bother animating Ooze speaking. He's just, head movements and that's it. They didn't even try to do any of those details. This is another example of poor editing because they would have already had fallen over like 3 times right now. I think the scene would have worked really good if they just had a little bit more money. The idea is there. Cool idea to use Haley's comment to kill Ivan Ooze, permanently kill him. It wasn't like a cop out and they sealed him away. They actually got rid of him and killed him, so that was really nice. The idea is there. This joke where they kick him in the balls, eh, it's okay. It's a cheesy PR thing you would do. It's fine. It's again, if nothing else was a problem with, it would have been fine. But because it's compounded with all the crummy CG, the one-liners, the bad animations, and it just feels awkward. I think this again would have been more impactful if this was a Bulk and Skull moment rather than Fred and his father. Because again, we really don't know Fred, we really don't know his father. They're not elaborated on, so I really don't have an emotional attachment to him. Even when I was a kid, I was saying to myself, why isn't this Bulk and Skull doing this? Like literally, they could have done the same thing. Instead of Fred and his father, it could have been Bulk and Skull. Like, say, Skull was taken over by the ooze, and Bulk had to rescue him. Far more impactful to fans because we know them. It would have been much more cooler because it would have been a situation that Bulk and Skull have never been in before. I do like this scene. You know, they didn't save him in time. He did actually die. I didn't feel like the whole powers bringing him back to life was a Deus Ex. I felt it was fine because these powers are different from any other Ranger powers, and in a sense, the 2017 movie kind of did the same thing. The Rangers' powers had the ability to bring someone back to life at least once. It's just like I'm always finding these weird connections from the 95 film and the 2017 film. It's like, did they do that on purpose? Or was that just a fluke? Bringing the command center back to order with the new powers again, great. It makes sense. It's not bringing Zordon back in the sense of bringing him back. I would say it's more like bringing time backwards in this environment. That's why the command center comes back backwards and Zordon comes back to life. They're reversing time. If you actually pay attention to the Ranger suits, they're pretty beat up at this point in filming. And I know the suits, the way they were made, they ripped extremely easily, and you can actually see it during like other scenes because armpit areas they ripped very easily. I think the boot areas also ripped fairly easily. It was a constant problem they had to deal with. The suits look cool, but the what they were made of, it didn't hold up at all. It was far worse than the spandex. So Fred and Tommy know each other from martial arts class. Too bad we didn't get to know that until the end of the film, where we could have at least seen them, trained. Maybe that's how they could have introduced Fred into the series. Well, movie, where you see him trained, then they do the jump in the plane or something. Maybe something like that. It would have been more interesting rather than just cold starting on Fred. Well, it was right in a way. A couple of years later, there became a Gold Ranger in Zeo. This was pretty cool though to see, and they actually did this practically. The Power Ranger sign that burns, they actually did that for real. Although it had to be modified and enhanced with some visual effects because I think the smoke blocked most of it, or it just didn't burn correctly. I never gave my rating on the actual film. It is pretty difficult on how to, go with this film because I don't want to outright say it's completely horrible, trash, don't watch it, it's junk. There's a lot of things that are really nice in it, and there's a lot of things that are bad in it. And I won't say it's. I have to give it out of 100 score. I would have to probably say a 60. Not totally terrible. It has some fine moments with the cast. Ooze, for the most part, is decent, but with the bad CG, the poor pacing, the bad editing, and lack of Zordon, lack of Alpha, lack of classic characters, especially Goldar, it sucked the life out of the film because when we want to see a movie from a TV series that we've grown up for at least 2 years with and that we loved, and then get introduced to so many new characters, and especially that some that don't even do anything, like Pig Dude. It's just like I care about the other characters. Why am I not getting time with them again? I understand the whole it's a movie, we got to do something new to, get a hook into people, but the hook for a kid, or at least a hook for me, it was seeing the updated visuals of the Rangers, their costume, the command center, but the characters are the focal point. That's what I want to see the updated stuff around. If you give us too many new characters and they cut away the old stuff, it doesn't feel fair. It just feels like they're being thrown away for the new stuff. There has to be a really good balance between old and new so that it doesn't feel like I'm what I love is being, pushed away.